And my talk is, as you can see behind me, one that is very much about purpose. It's about a journey, and it's about something that concerns everybody in this room this evening. And I want you to start off by asking a question. Now, some of you have come as groups, some of you have come as pairs, some of you might have come alone, but no one's alone in this room. If you have come as a single, turn to the person next to you, behind you, in front of you, and ask a question. What is a dream job? You might say, what is my dream job? What is your dream job? What do we understand by dream job? My dream job is to be able to take a break after about 2 minutes of a talk, because I'm going to give you 60 seconds to just do that. Let's just start talking amongst ourselves, and let's just come up with something here. Because I've got a feeling that when we come back to this later on, your answer might be slightly different. So off you go, speak amongst yourselves. I'm workshopping tonight, so let me set up everything I need for that. Well, this is great. Thank you, everybody. I think I succeeded in my first prompt because you all started talking. And you're going to have a chance to talk again later. But for now, as every good host knows, a click of the fingers, a shh, and we come back. Now, that is a question that obviously prompted something from you. It's something you've been asked before, maybe over a drink, maybe in a job interview, maybe during a midlife crisis. What is a dream job, all right? And it's not a rhetorical question. We are going to address that. That is effectively why we're here tonight. We're going to be talking about and breaking down the concept of those words, dream and job. We're going to be talking about perceptions. We're going to be talking about external factors, internal realities, and we're going to work our way through the whole concept of whether or not it exists, whether we should pursue it, or whether we should redefine it. But I was asked on a regular basis whether I had a dream job in my career. And in fact, I was told by many people, yeah, you've got the dream job. And that was probably because I was on TV. Yeah, people like TV, glamorous. I had the best seat in the house. I was at the major sporting events worldwide. I had my own TV show. That was the most recent one on Disney+. Wow. And I got to work with superstars. That's the Premier League trophy with Michael Owen. That is David Beckham over there. So, naturally, people would come to me and say, hey, you've got the dream job, buddy. And if they didn't say it to my face, they might say it on social media, because I did it for a long time. They liked what I did, and they said the nicest things. Again, things like this. Born for the job. Tends to make you think you should be doing it, right? Is there anyone better? Well, of course, it's totally subjective, and I'm not doing this for the flex. This is to reinforce the point that people seem to think that I was where I should be, doing what I should do. But here's what they don't tweet about. They don't tweet about what comes next. They don't tweet about what happens when the job no longer exists. And you find yourself saying, was I really pursuing a dream? Or was I chasing somebody else's dream? Was I caught up in something that left me 20 years later not really knowing quite what it was that I was supposed to be doing? So this is what we're going to do tonight. We're going to deconstruct this whole business about dreams and dream jobs. We're going to talk about purpose, and we might just work our way towards the conclusion that it's when the dream ends that the story really begins. We're going to fold back on ourselves. And I'll go back on my career in a short while and talk about the way I evolved. And we can all apply it to our lives. Because it might seem that there's a guy on stage talking about superstars, standing in big stadiums all over the world. But I'll be addressing something that impacts all of us. And it's a question of purpose and direction. So what I want to do right now is address this. Because when this one came to me in 2015 on Twitter, it articulated something that I was thinking. Not that I was going to die at the time, I was hoping not to, but it was like, when my job came to an end, and this poor guy, somewhere in Africa I think, couldn't accept the idea that I might not be saying, hi, watch the football today anymore. I was thinking something similar. I was thinking, what do I do next? What am I doing now? What's the purpose of all this? And I want us to work on this if we possibly can. I want us to get into a little bit of questioning. Are we dreaming when we say that we can chase a dream job? Are we dreaming when we think we're in a dream job? Are we dreaming when we think we have to even build something beyond this? I'm going to say to you tonight that it's better not to chase a dream, that it's better to build your dream. And I'll give you evidence as to why we can do this. But first, I'm going to give you a heads up. During the course of this talk, there are going to be 3 situations that I want to workshop later on. All right? So right now, you can do a little bit on this one, and we're going to revisit it in a Q&A session later on. But I want you to start asking these questions. I want to break this down. Firstly, I'll just move into my TV studio here. Do I have a dream job? Okay? Or how about this? Is a dream job a product of hindsight? Oh, come to think of it, this is what I'm supposed to do. Or I'll never have anything better than this. Does my dream job change over time? We change, our dreams and aspirations change, our reality changes. So does our concept of what our dream job is change over time? Is it my dream job? Or is it somebody else's? Is somebody else projecting onto me what they always wanted to do, what they wish they could do? And therefore they say, well, you've got the dream job because that's what I want to do. And is my dream job a work in progress? Take a look at those, and I'm going to allow you to talk again now, because I want you to spend another 60 seconds or so just turning to the person next to you and saying, which one of those questions is the one that you think you'd most like to develop this evening? And then later, as I said, we'll have a Q&A, and we can talk about this. So off you go. Pick one of those and have a little chat about it. Which one of those resonates the most with you?
So, what is your dream job?
My dream job, already in my dream job. My business what I started.
What happened if you retire?
I retired.
You see, basically what happens is you might be in your dream job now, but over time, hindsight, when you retire, and what your dream job is, will you still continue doing what you are doing?
I'll continue to do what I'm doing. Basically, it will be an expansion, it will be an expansion.
So it is your own business. So your own business, of course, but will you come to a time that you are no more able to continue because of a lot of consider?
Probably no, because it's a niche market, so there's no competitor.
So you might be doing until you decide to quit.
And my person will still be ongoing
Because,
rather than retirement.
because you are different, because you are doing your own business.
All right, everybody. Okay. Again, just when you were getting into a flow, I'm going to cut you short cruelly, but we have a chance to talk again later on. Okay? So if I could just get your attention back. Again, I'm delighted as a speaker and as a host to see that you're engaged. Delighted to hear you speaking. Delighted that something I'm asking you is resonating with you. Now, as I said earlier on, we're going to consider this. Is the moment the dream ends when your story really begins. We're going to talk about how you take all that you've been and apply it to what you can be, that you're constantly allowed to redefine and redraw the parameters of what you are and what you want to be based on what you've got and who you are. So that's what I want us to do. Now, if only I could get this sponsored by a company that spoke about building dreams. Wouldn't that be amazing, eh? Maybe next time. Maybe next time. Gratuitous commercial plug there from me. So, I'm going to now take it back and try and understand this business about why I was told by people that I had their dream job. And it comes back to my career. So I'm going to quickly take you through that, because mine was a career totally lacking in purpose. Seriously, totally lacking in purpose, direction, or vision for about 90%. There's a little plot spoiler for you, okay? And I'll tell you why that was. Because I was a guy who dropped out of university, went to live in Hong Kong with my parents, didn't know what on earth I was going to do. I could speak, I could communicate, that's why I'm doing this, I guess, but I didn't know how to apply it to anything until somebody gave me a job at a newspaper. And suddenly, everything really started to make sense. And it wasn't just a job at a newspaper, it was the best job at a newspaper. I was at the South China Morning Post, the Langhua Zhoubo, which was a fantastic newspaper in those days. I was a junior reporter who within 5 years became a sports reporter, an entertainment writer, a feature writer, interviewing superstars, politicians, Arnold Schwarzenegger one week, Jackie Chan the next week, someone who went to the moon, somebody who did the first ever heart transplant the next. An incredible job. I found myself editing columns, diary columns, editing entertainment, writing movie reviews, because it was a land of opportunity in those days, and I was hungry to learn and eager to grow. So that was seemingly a dream job for me. It also gave me skills. It taught me how to tell stories, my own story, other people's stories, how to communicate, how to edit, all these important skills that were to come into play later on. So I did that, but again, it wasn't something I'd ever dreamed of doing. It wasn't something I planned. I didn't study journalism. I just got the job and I was able to do the job. And then from there, I moved on to television. Not because I wanted to. In fact, when TVB in Hong Kong came to me and said, "Hey John, can you come on and do movie reviews on TV?" I said no. I said no. I said TV, and I was a bit of a punky young Englishman back then, anti-establishment. TV's corny. Looking at a camera, talking, I could never do that. But then they persuaded me and said, "Don't be stupid, come on TV." So I did, so I went on TV. And then I was hosting the Oscars, and then I was hosting my own show, and then I was able to work in entertainment, which was great fun for a long time. But then I put the handbrake on, and I decided I liked sport again. Because remember, I didn't have any purpose or plan. I fancied doing sport again. So I went to learn how to do sports TV, and I was given an opportunity because people supported me throughout my life. Kind people, people who saw something in me, pushed me in the right direction. And I was working for a sports production company as a producer, not even on TV, when somebody from Star Sports rang me and said, "Hey John, I've heard about you, I've seen you doing movies on TV, do you know anything about sport?" And I said, "Yeah, sport, I am Mr. Sport, I grew up playing sport, I love sport, I wrote about sport." And they said, "Well, what are you, a producer or a presenter?" And I said, "Well, I present, but I produce, I really like producing." And my boss at the time came running into our little office, put his hand over the phone and said, "You're a presenter, you fool." Yeah, I guess I'm more of a presenter. And I was hired by Star Sports to go and commentate and present and work on a range of sports. But again, I needed somebody to push me in that direction. And this all built towards what I guess you would call the first of my TV dream jobs. I'd had the newspaper one, then I came to this place. And what was amazing was this series of fortunate events took me into a wonderful place where I presented sport all over the world. Wimbledon, US Open, Masters Golf, Formula One, but then I started zooming in on football. And I presented football on ESPN. We had Premier League football, Champions League football. We interviewed superstars, Thierry Henry, one of the best interviews I've ever done. And I'll tell you why, make a note of that, somebody. There's an important lesson in relatability and empathy that I'll talk to you about. Irina, remember that one later on, all from Thierry Henry. It was all about smiles. I got to meet my heroes, Bobby Robson, legendary manager, came and worked on our show. I played golf with him. I went to dinner with him. I got to meet my heroes. And I got to go out and meet fans and speak to fans, and it was smiles all along. I was lucky, very, very lucky to have this. But again, it was a series of just fortunate events that took me. No great planning about any of this. And then I moved to the Premier League, as it was known then, the Barclays Premier League. It was all very dark blue and very corporate. Now it's all very colourful, like your beautiful term. It's very, very colourful and inclusive, diverse and beautiful. Then it was stuffy, and it was not very, very nice at all. So, we find ourselves now in the Premier League, and I realized that this was serious. What did I do for a living? I did two major things. One of them was to introduce sports, and the other was to do interviews. I'll come to the interviews a bit later on, but first I want to just step into my TV studio and tell you the sort of thing that I did every Saturday and every Sunday for 15 years. Every single weekend, I went to work and I did something like this. I played some music. It's Derby Day in the Barclays Premier League. And that means fierce crosstown rivalries in Liverpool and in North London. They say that in derbies, form goes out the window. And that may not be the worst thing in the world for all involved. But they also say history has taught us that a derby can ignite a season, can spark a club, and fire a city. Welcome to Matchday Live. That's what I did, time and time again. I stood up and I introduced a day full of programming. And if you want more evidence of that, well, here we are.
In Liverpool and North London. They say form goes out the window, and that may not be the worst thing in the world for all involved. Yet history's also taught us that a derby can provide a spark, can ignite a club's season, and fire a city.
There are great derbies in grand sporting cities all over the world. Each has its own identity.
Well, I kind of remembered most of the words, right? Or I would do this.
It was an epic journey that began with a win over Manchester United on August the 15th, 2004. Over two spells at Stamford Bridge, Jose Mourinho took charge of 321 games, winning 204 of them, leading the club to 3 Premier League titles and breaking the two Manchester clubs' grip on the trophy. Now, though, he returns to Chelsea as the manager of Manchester United, and the wheel has come full circle.
And maybe we'll talk a little bit about body language and presentation. Because when I was doing that, that was the thing we did at the start of about 8 or 9 hours of live programming. And the whole point of those little 30, 40-second pieces was to make sure the audience was transfixed. That they said, yeah, I'm going to watch this. I want to be here for the whole night. And I became known as the guy who could stand up and hype, really build up a show, really sell a sporting event. And that's something I think we can work on, because the fans seem to like it. Okay, good. I was paid to do it. But we can all do this, you know? And this is going to be a workshop that we do later on as well. Because all of you, if you want to, you can come and stand here and do it. But all of you can sit there later on and you can do a little intro. All right? And what I want you to do is I want you to sort of think like a TV host. If you find yourself ahead of a big presentation, a big talk, anything like that, I want you to start thinking about how you would do it, to begin it with a bang, to set up the show, as it were, recreate the kind of TV opening that I've done. Imagine you're coming off the titles and the audience is spellbound and waiting for you. And then what you do is you set up the meat of your talk. Okay? So we're going to come back to this. All right? Nobody run away. I won't make you come up here and embarrass you. I just will work with you later on learning how to do this, learning how to give it that impact, that presence, that dynamism that captures the attention of the audience, that hooks them as you start whatever it is that you're going to be doing. So that's coming up a little bit later on. 30 to 40 seconds only, but again, I'll repeat this later on. Now, let's take you back to my career. Let's take you to Cape Town, South Africa. I was very lucky within the Premier League time. I had 7 years with the Premier League, and I traveled around the world, from Africa to India, all over, out here to Southeast Asia, to Hong Kong, and to China, working on Premier League events. This was a fan park we did just under the shadow of Table Mountain in Cape Town. Some 30,000 people came through the gates over 2 days. On that day, I think eventually we had 16,000 fans in there. And I was on a little stage, well, not that little, you can see my face on a huge screen there, talking to 16,000 people as we showed live Premier League action, interviewed superstars, and put on a party for everybody. Sounds like I was living the dream, right? Well, I probably was, because it doesn't get much better or bigger than that. I also found myself doing something that I really enjoy. If you're on a stage and you've got 16,000 people, not as quiet and polite as you guys are, 16,000 people, maybe with a few drinks in them, rowdy football fans, you've got to command their attention. And I would be there, and I would have Robbie Fowler, Peter Schmeichel, and another superstar next to me. And I would have a panel discussion, and I had to make sure that what I did on stage was so captivating, so compelling, that everyone would stop talking, would listen, and would be engaged in what I was doing. And that's going to lead me on to something else that we're going to do as well. A very important of what we do is this, the panel discussion. Now, whatever walk of life you're in, whatever role, whatever industry, at some point you'll find yourself at a conference, on stage at a conference, maybe as a moderator, maybe as a panelist, certainly as a member of the audience. And if you do, a bit like me, maybe you find yourself going, that could have been better. You're at a conference, and the most exciting thing is the coffee, the networking, the stuff that happens outside of the room. You know what I mean? Experience that? We'll talk about that later on, because what I always feel is that the panel should be the thing you're there for. And that's obviously the organizer's dream, their ambition. Why could they be better? I'll give you a sense about how you should moderate, whether it's for television, in my studio over here, when I have 3 guests here, or 2 guests, or whatever it might be, or even on stage. We'll also talk a bit about bringing value as a panelist, the do's and the don'ts, all right? So that's another workshop we're going to do later on. And we're going to talk essentially about what you can be. But I'm going to take you back to Cape Town, because as I stood on stage in 2016 in Cape Town, in front of all those wonderful people, in the most beautiful setting, magical setting, I had some doubts and I had some fears in the back of my mind, because I already knew that my role with the Premier League was coming to an end. Whatever business you're in, uncertainty can creep in. Things beyond your control. In my case, there was a change of management, there was a change of direction, there was a rebranding, and also a sense that they wanted to freshen things up. And I knew that my role was either going to be severely reduced, and I'd had a good run for 7 years, or it was going to be ended completely. So in the back of my mind, I was starting to think, why, but also what next? And that's something that happens to all of us in this room. It's happening to thousands of people outside this room. Whatever industry you might be in, you arrive at this place. I'm going to now tell you that in the course of my career, I've been very, very lucky. As we take a look at, he gave me a shock, Fergie, as he always did. Some people who gave me some advice, prompted me along the way. When I was at ESPN here in Asia, one of my colleagues once said to me, John, don't take this the wrong way, but you do the same thing every weekend. You do it great, and it's great fun, and everyone would like to do it. Haven't you ever wanted to do more than just introduce football matches? And I thought it for about 10 seconds, went, no, because I was loving it. I was loving life. I was thinking, yeah, this is what I was meant to do. This is what I can do. This is my dream. But then, some years later, I was given some advice by somebody who is probably the most inspirational, visionary, intimidating person that I knew at that time. You've just seen him, and it's not him. Oh no, the person who gave me the hurry up, who prompted me to think about something truly amazing, was the biggest name that you could possibly drop in Singapore. When I was working on ESPN Star Sports, I developed a friendship with the British High Commissioner, who was a lovely man. tall, gangly Mr. Bean of an Englishman. And he loved throwing parties at his amazing house, colonial house on Nassim Road called Eden Hall. If there was a British pop band in town, he would invite them there. If there was something happening in sport, he would invite them there. And he would invite me to be the MC. And I would always do it for free. I would always go along and I'd be the MC for the FA Cup event or the Commonwealth Games event. And one day he said to me, I've got something special happening. I want to reward you for all of the work you've done. We've got a very special guest for dinner. Could you and your wife come and join us? Just a small gathering. And it was a kind of best of British thing. We had someone from Rolls-Royce, someone from Marks & Spencer, Kurzbank, something like that. All of these British icons. And me. I guess I was the Premier League guy. So that's why I was there. Anyway, we turn up. We make small talk. We're nervous as anything. Because it's not just Mr. Lee. It's his incredible wife. One of the most intelligent people I've ever come across, who was going to be there as well. And so eventually, after the small talk, word got out, they've arrived. So we stood very polite. Nervously, knees knocking a little bit. And I was at the end of the line. And the High Commissioner showed Mr. Lee Kuan Yew all the way along until he finally came face to face with me. And he was about that age at this time, but still physically commanding, still an incredible aura and presence. And he stood here as he came to the end of the line, having met all these wonderful tycoons, superstars of industry. And he was introduced to me by the commissioner, who said, and now finally, our superstar. Here's John. This is John Dykes. Mr. Lee shook my hand and said, yes, John. Now tell me, what do you do? Well, I'm the lead anchor on the Premier League's coverage of football and other sports around Asia for ESPN and Star Sports. Yes. But what do you do? My heart was pounding. My stomach was up in my mouth. Next to me, my wife, a Singaporean who had been so excited about this opportunity, stiffened almost imperceptibly. Oh God, I thought, he's doing it. He's going to sort of question why I'm not a banker, doctor, lawyer, teacher, engineer. And it seemed like an eternity, but I had to come up with an answer in a hurry. And I mumbled something about entertaining and informing people. The handshake finished, little nod, off he went, leaving me thinking, oh no, this didn't start well, did it? But it was okay, because later on that evening, it was a small gathering over dinner, we bonded. We bonded over our love for golf, about his little golf course at the Astana, and how he scored a hole-in-one. And then we spoke about other things, and he was incredible. The most remarkable man I've ever come across in the course of an evening, just laying out his philosophy, his plans, his vision, his worldview, in such a way that we went away thinking, this is why Singapore is a success story. It is. But anyway, I dropped a huge name, and I also did so by telling a little story. And we're going to workshop that later on as well. Because what I think we can do, all of us, and we do it to varying degrees when we tell stories, is we can actually play a role. I've got my TV studio over here. I've got my little acting area over here. So we can do it. I'm not an actor. I'm not a professional actor. But we can do this. When we tell a story, we can think, okay, what space have I got? How can I use the space? What can I do in this area? What would work best? What gestures? Should I change a voice? Should I take on a persona? We're going to workshop this a little bit later on, because this all helps. We'll block out, as if we were a movie director, what we can do with our space. And you might see that I'm trying to use this stage in a certain way, a central position to speak from, a TV studio, an acting space. We'll figure out how we're going to do this, okay? So anyway, I left that evening having thought, well, thank goodness we had a great time, but in the back of my mind was this, what do you do? What do you really do? And as things started to come to a head with the Premier League role, I realized I needed to think about this. What did I do? Because things were accelerating towards the end, and they did come. And when the end finally came, Was I the guy who had the dream job? Not really. I was the guy who'd got caught up in a dream for 20 years, and then at the end of that was just an aging guy, not really knowing what on earth he was going to do next. That's my reality. And I realized I had to take action. So what I did, and what all of us must do when something happens that's beyond our control, when things come to an end, is we've first of all got to accept that it's not the end of the world. There's sometimes things happen, and if we're lucky, we have a plan in place. If not, we can turn to what we are, what we've got, what we've been, and who's around us, and we can make something happen. So, first thing I wanted to do, and I think the first thing we all have to do, is embrace a positive mindset, abundance even. Don't spend your life saying, that was unfair. Why did that happen to me? It's that person's fault. Circumstances changed. I tell you what changed for me, and I was telling Irina about this earlier on. I was in England working for a TV channel that was never shown in England. It was purely made for international audiences. So what that meant was all the time I was in England, I had this sneaking fear at the back of my mind that the job might come to an end. And when it did, I'd have to go into the UK TV market and find work there. But the only problem was, I was never on TV in that market. Let me tell you another couple of stories here. So, sports TV is glamorous, it's hugely entertaining, but it's also a ruthless, brutal space. And that would be true of Hollywood and any other industry that's coveted, where there's huge amounts of money up for grabs, where the jobs are desired by everybody. And the reason I'm telling you this is I'm going to tell you something that I haven't spoken about in the 8 years since I left the Premier League. When I went across to England, I did so fully aware that having been in Asia, where we're gracious, we're charming, we're positive, I was going into a very different environment. The reason I knew that was shortly before I left Singapore to go over to England, I got a phone call from the person who hired me. And he said to me, hey John, he said, just to let you know, we've just fielded a phone call from quite a famous TV presenter here in England. Someone actually that I knew, someone I'd worked with a few times. And he said, this person rang up my big boss and said, we gather you've hired John to be the anchor for the global Premier League channel. And they said, yeah, that's right. And he said, well, don't hire him. Oh, no, he's not the man for the job at all. You need me. I'm the one you need. So I said, oh, yeah. And the guy who hired me said, well, we just laughed it off and said, we're happy we've got John. Thank you very much. We'll leave it at that. So I said, thanks for telling me. He said, I just wanted you to know that that's the environment that you're going to be coming into. And what made it even more memorable was 2 days later, my phone rang. And it was the guy. Hey, John, I heard you got the job at the Premier League. I said, yeah, you heard right. Wow. Well, when I heard the news, John, I told everybody who would listen, they've got the right guy. They couldn't have got anyone better than John. And I thought to myself, oh, okay, like that, is it? And I said, right, okay, thank you. And he said, you know what? Just do me a favor. Could you just look out for me if there's any jobs going? Yeah. Put a word in for me, would you? So I said, yeah, I'll tell them exactly what I think of you. Yeah, no problem. Bye-bye. That was before I went to England. When I got to England, it was a wonderful job. Entertaining, exciting. I learned skills I didn't have before. But all along, there was an atmosphere of backstabbing and insecurity about roles and agents trying to place people. And you just learned. You just learned that you had to be a bit smart and a bit savvy, and you had to deal with that. And as I left England, I realized there's no point in being bitter. Because when I left England, as I said, I went to a commercial channel and said, hey guys, I'm available. What do you think? And they said to me, John, we love your work. We've got guys who've worked with you. They say the best things about you. But you're the wrong age and the wrong gender right now for this industry. So I went, okay. And I came back to Singapore. And I thought to myself, there's no point in being bitter, resentful, or anything else, because it is what it is. And when something happens that's a product of forces that are beyond your control, you then have to say, right, am I going to be the person who is negative, or am I going to be that positive person? I knew I didn't want to be the people who ran around backstabbing, trying to get jobs, trying to undermine others in their roles, being poisonous, toxic, and bitter. Because all that happened to those people is they ended up in a diminishing spiral of misery, trying to grab jobs that were no longer there. I didn't want to be that person. So I said, let's embrace the positive spirit. Let's go and do something. Let's go somewhere positive from this place of disappointment. What I did as well, and what you should always do, is buy yourself a bit of time. I found something left over from my legacy career. I found a job in Singapore that supported me for 3 or 4 years, broadcasting for Fox Sports and then Disney after that. And all the while that I was doing that, in an industry that was disrupted, an industry that was really not going to see me through for many more years, I was thinking, what do I do next? I was planning. I was thinking, how do I do this? I was networking, and I was coming up with ideas until I saw this happen. And I thought, bingo. People get paid to travel the world speaking, coaching, workshopping. It's pretty glamorous. It pays well. It plays into a skill set of being able to speak and command and have presence, empathy, relatability. I think I can do that. So at least finally I had a plan. And it was a plan that called upon what I'd been. Because what did I say earlier? It's not a 180 turnaround. When you have a career transition or pivot, it's not a complete reinvention. It's just a repurposing of what you've got. The ability to tell stories, speak, whatever it might be. You repurpose that, but it has to be done in a positive direction. So, you take baby steps. Here I am, and I'm indebted to Vlad and the team here for having me here. I'm beginning to get on stages and speak. I've got friends in the room who've enabled me to do this as well, and this is great. People have coached me in speaking. People have helped me along. I, in turn, have been coaching. That's me working with a large multinational bank, and I went in there to speak to them about speech and presentation. Middle management from different departments, all of them needing help with speech and presentation. And I suffered the worst imposter syndrome. I thought, I'm going to go in there, and they're going to say, what's the bloody football guy doing here? What on earth has he got to tell us about anything to do with our job? But it turned out perfectly, because the ability to engage, to hook, to relate, to speak, to command, to own any moment, whether it's client-facing, internal, any way that you might speak, that resonates with people. So tomorrow morning, I'll be working with a huge fintech company. I've already worked with their sales team. I've worked with their business development team. Tomorrow I'm working with their customer success team. And they've got me in there to deliver a talk I call Own the Moment, which is about this. It's about ensuring that you own every possible speaking and engaging moment that comes your way. All right? So I started doing this. Along the way, I needed lots of pats on the back because it was scary. I had to have people saying that. I needed a few cheerleaders, and you will do that. But I had to resist the temptation to just go and do the stuff I'd always done. I had to resist the temptation to reach out for low-paying work that was a bit below me just because it was TV work, and I knew how to do that. That's human nature, to go for the conservative. Instead, I said, no, I'm going to go and do the thing that is going to take me places. So, I communicated this in a LinkedIn post last week. It turned out to be quite a popular post. I spoke about dream jobs and spoke about the things I'm talking about right now. And it got picked up by a guy that I know in Senegal, in Africa. And he posted about it. And he got a huge amount of traction because he took my story and he turned it into something that he built a whole post around, coming to this conclusion, which funnily enough is the conclusion that we have been working towards throughout my talk this evening. Maybe the dream job doesn't exist. Maybe the dream job is what you actually make of it. But what does matter is this: showing up with curiosity, adapting with grace, allowing your passion to evolve with each chapter. Sometimes that dream job isn't found, it's built. So, I say this: don't chase after a fixed point that might be of somebody else's making. They project a dream job onto you. Don't do that. Build it as you go. And you might just find that you have got the dream job after all. So what is it? We've worked around this topic, and we're going to talk about it in our Q&A in just a moment. I'm here, I'm available, I'm publicizing myself, I'm marketing myself, I'm out there speaking, I'm out there coaching, and I'm absolutely loving it. Is it a dream job? Well, we'll decide that later on, because actually, we're talking about building something, and that's something that I'm very happy to be doing. Thank you for being here, and I look forward to our Q&A. I'm going to do three things now. First thing we'll do is a Q&A, let's just pick up on what we did straight away there. So I think the first thing I want to do is get into our Q&A, which is going to be the first thing we did. I think I asked you earlier on to talk about this, the dream job stuff. And I know that all of you spoke amongst yourselves about this, so why don't we get these questions up here, and why don't you come back and ask me a little bit about that, okay? So, Q&A based on the talk. Anything you want to know about my journey, my transition, or any advice that I might have in terms of the dream job. Yes?
What did you study?
Because I was purposeless, I studied English and American literature, which I loved. The only things I loved about school, which I didn't hate, by the way, was sport. I played every sport you possibly could, and English, and a bit of geography. But I came out of school with no idea what I wanted to do. And I drifted around, as I said, until somebody said, you can do this. In fact, it was when I was at university, I worked on the college radio station. And that was the first time I realized that I could speak, I could communicate, I could tell stories, and somebody might pay me for it. So that was how I started off, but English at university. All right, any other questions about the talk? Yes, sir, down the front.
Right, everyone will have to retire at one time or another. So the moment you retire, your dream job ended. What is your next move?
Well, the good news is, because I stopped doing what I did a few years ago, retirement is certainly not on the horizon for me anytime soon. And, touch wood, I try to keep myself as healthy and fit as I can. So I'm actually 60 now, but I'm starting a whole new career. And I have every intention of doing it for 10 or 15 years because, as you saw from those slides, I'm so excited about the possibilities as speaker, coach, anything else that might come along, that I will do that. But to your point, I think what you do is you say, again, I question the concept of a dream job. I think it's more about a dream life. Your dream life might be that you do all the things you love, and then you got to do other things you love. But they might involve playing golf or taking care of grandchildren or whatever it might be. I think that's our dream life. Yes?
Which markets would you like to expand your business into if you had a chance? Which markets would you like to do that?
I'd be happy to go anywhere, to be honest with you. When you've had a global resonance, as I do, say for example, the Indian subcontinent, I've been on TV for years in India, and one of the nicest things that happens is I could be anywhere around the world, and somebody will come up to me, somebody from India or Pakistan or Sri Lanka will come up to me, Bangladesh, and say, thank you, John. I said, what for? And they say, thank you for introducing us to sport. We used to watch you growing up. That makes me feel old, by the way, but I don't mind it. It's lovely. So of course, obviously, that's a market. I've already been there. I spoke to a major insurance company a few weeks back. I gave them a 45-minute talk on emotional intelligence based around sporting leadership. So I could see that the world is out there for me. I'll go anywhere. I'm going to Las Vegas in about 6 weeks' time, not to talk, but to commentate on table tennis. And that would be quite fun, wouldn't it? Yes?
Okay, where do you see your purpose? Whether in doing a dream job or building it?
I think the journey is better than a destination. Because remember I said earlier on that the destination might be something that people impose upon you. We love labels these days, don't we? Dream job itself, as I said, is something that perhaps is a projection from other people onto you. I think you should just enjoy it. As you can tell, I've had the most amazing life and career. And I'm never going to say, well, that's done. That was horrible. It wasn't. It was fantastic. It was brilliant. And every day I tap into that. But I want to tap into that to take me into something new. So I would say you just carry on building. And there's much more pleasure to be had. What are you going to do? You're going to sit back, say, I've got my dream job. Here's a cigar. That's it. Stop. My life's over now. I don't think so. Anything else? Remember, I've still got some workshopping to do. Yeah, fine. Over here. Yeah, go up in here.
John, what's fueling your drive?
My drive, coffee at the moment. Very nice strong coffee from out there. No, my drive has always been, I learned a lesson from my father. My father was a working class man from the northeast of England who left school at 15, who went to London to help rebuild after the war. His father was a contractor. He found himself in a bank, and he found himself behind the counter of a bank. But he was also someone who was sharp and intuitive, and he was lucky in that people saw that in him. By the time he ended his career, he had risen through the ranks of the bank to become the managing director of an Asia-based subdivision of Citicorp, which basically handled loan syndication for major infrastructure projects around the world. Hundreds of millions of dollars with a syndicate of banks funding a nuclear power station or a hydroelectric dam. He was my inspiration, and what he taught me was if you present yourself well and if you keep working and you drive at everything you do in life, you've got a chance. That's what keeps me going. Yes? Yeah, this gentleman here with the hand up. Oh, well, take this one first then.
Okay.
Yeah. Hey, John. So I'm curious to know that whether you have, along your career, was there a moment of time that you had self-doubt about you're not the right person for the job? I know that, sometimes you feel you're really good, but there are people along the way that they might be doing it better than you. So have you felt that way, and how did you overcome it and keep moving?
You're looking at a TV presenter, and I don't think that there is a more insecure, vain breed of people than TV presenters. Narcissistic even at times, but yeah, when you do what you do and it's public facing, yes, you're always going to get that because you have to learn how to deal with criticism. You can go and write something in a newspaper or you can go on TV and you won't please everybody. Somebody won't like it. Somebody will find fault with you and you might question yourself. You might be put up for a big job. Let's face it, when someone said to me, you're going to go on TV, and I remember when I was at ESPN, we did a football match from the Premier League, and it was sold on to China, to CCTV. They didn't normally show it, but it was because Sun Jihai played for Manchester City, and Lee Thier was playing for Everton. I was told we had 1.2 million viewers for that match. And I'm in the studio looking at the camera, and you're thinking, do I belong here? Should I be doing this? But you do it. You trust in yourself, your background, your knowledge, those who hired you. And yes, I think having that kind of self-doubt is the best thing that can happen. Similarly with nerves. I might stand here, because I've done this so many times, and convey positive optimism, but I would be a little bit on edge before I did this, in the same way that you should always question yourself, because it's only by doing that that you bring out the best in yourself. Okay?
Hi John, thank you very much for sharing your story. My question is, how did you manage the transition? I'm a bit curious to know what you did to manage the transition.
Well, I'd be lying if I said it was easy. Nothing is ever as easy as you say, because there's always self-doubt. There's imposter syndrome at every level. And there's also this business about self-analysis, introspection. Why did this happen? Why didn't I do that? As I said, I've had a career without any real purpose to it. I've just been lucky. I've been swept along by kind people, by good opportunities and circumstances. But you do at the end say, oh, should I have done that? Why didn't I study this? Why didn't I be a bit more focused? So there's that. And there have been times recently when I've thought to myself, and of course you don't earn as much money because suddenly you're out on your own and you're having to, your business development, your marketing, your content creation, your talent, your everything in this field. And so you get into a point where you go, I used to have a PR department, I used to have this, I used to have producers, I used to have this. Suddenly you're on your own, and that's a very vulnerable feeling. But here I am doing it, and I think managing the transition has been down to seeking out communities like this one. There are some speakers in this room and people from speakers associations that I work with who have been so supportive. Community is the key. Find people, and they are everywhere, who can help you with the things you need to know. And I've been introduced to AI that helps me with aspects of it by a very kind person. I've been taught how to do different things on stage. People will help you. So I think finding communities is the key. Yes?
Yeah. Hi, John.
Hi. I can hear you.
Can I ask a question? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Singapore soccer situation is in the low tracks. It has been a long time since they improved. So what is your advice to the Singapore soccer officials that can uplift our
All right, I'm with you. I'm going to keep this one short, but I will come and talk to you afterwards, okay? Because I want to workshop a little bit of stuff on stage in a moment. I will say this, you have to have a fundamental belief that football is something that plays a huge role in Singapore. You have to support that at governmental level and commercial level. You have to also, I think, be respectful of sport, and you have to elevate sport to the level that it needs to be, whether it is the match day experience, whether it is the way we bring up and we celebrate our players, the way we pay people who are involved in sport. You have to show it respect and credibility if it's going to have any chance of developing. I'll come and talk to you about it in more detail later on, because there is all sorts of socio-cultural reasons behind this one. But I would say this, Singapore decided like that to have the world's first Formula One night race, and it happened in about 9 months. If the will was there for football, you could see a 12-team franchise league with some big names in it in just a matter of years. So it could happen. I want to do a bit of workshopping, guys, if that's okay, because I did promise you this. How much time have we got, Vlad? Are we still okay for a bit of time?
Only like 10 minutes.
Perfect, that's perfect. I just wanted to go into a little bit of this because... No, that's okay. I'm going to get people to stand if that's all right. So this was the thing about starting as you mean to go on. I'm not going to spend too long on this one. This was the one where I stood here and I did an introduction to a show. All I will say about this is that, was it something that scared you guys? Or did you think, yeah, I need to learn how to do this one? You come off the title sequence, da 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 da, this is the start of the speech. If nothing else happens when you speak, make sure you start well and you finish well. All right? If the stuff in the between goes well, great. All right? That's really nice. But people will remember the way you start and they will remember the way you finish. How many times do you hear someone deliver something and at the end go, yeah, so yeah. And that's how they end. No, think about it, plan it. I used to do 9 hours on air without an auto cue because I don't like auto cue. I don't like, you see it, even the best presenters, if their eye is just following it, you lose spontaneity. But what I did was I made sure I knew my script, I wrote a script, I rehearsed a script, and that allowed me to do something which is very important. It's what I call rehearsed spontaneity. If you know where you're supposed to be going, you know the flow, the rundown, and you've worked on it, then when you're in front of the room and you see something or someone that sparks a better line, use the better line. Okay? Rehearse to be spontaneous. Okay, I'll give you that. But I want to just work on another thing I did here, which is the other workshop was this one, where I did my Mr. Lee Kuan Yew story. I did it over here. And what I did was, even though it's a little room and a little stage, I made the most, or I tried to make the most of what I could. Central speaking position, here. Commanding most of the room. This was my TV studio here, because I wanted to mock up a TV studio to try and get into that sense that this is where I was working. This was where I told my stories. And this is where I told that story about going to the High Commissioner's house and meeting Mr. and Mrs. Lee. And this is where I played a few roles, brought a little bit of drama to the story. I'm not an actor, but we're all actors to an extent. We all tell stories. We all go home and say, hey, did you see that? And we act. So why don't we do it when we're speaking? Tons of people are going to teach you about body language, and you need to know about body language. You need to know about intentional body language, doing something that symbolizes, that represents. But you can also act, and you can use the space on a stage. I might stand here and I say, well, there are two kinds of people in this world. There are those who insist that the world is flat. And then there are those who know it isn't. So what I've done is I've created two camps, and then I've moderated. And then I can say, these people think this, because I've created something using the space I have here. I went and sat down there. I won't do it again, because my knees don't like doing that very much. But that was to try and tell you some personal stories about weird stuff that happened to me when I was working at the Premier League in England. That was meant to be a bit more relaxed, a bit more intentional. You can get down off the stage, you can walk around, okay? Use your physical space as much as you can. Any questions on that? Silence? Okay, good. Maybe we'll do this. So you use the room, think about the space you're in, and get to the content of your speech, because it has to be appropriate. All right, so I've told you to do certain things, but don't shoehorn it into a speech if it doesn't work. Only do it if it's appropriate. In the same way, only use body language as appropriate. I'll tell you this, I'm going to get into my little conspiratorial position here. A few weeks before the general election, I actually had an approach from one of the political parties saying, hey, we're thinking we might need to get you in to speak to our candidates. A little bit of training. It didn't happen in the end. They got a bit scared. They called me back and said, oh, I sent them a proposal. And they said, we love what you're going to teach us. But then they said, but there's a lot of heat around at the moment. We'll do it next time. But the point is, the politicians do seek training. And how many people do you see in Singapore who deliver a speech, but no matter what the word is or the phrase they express, they just use the same gesture every time? It's not appropriate to the words. So you must always be intentional with the body language, with the space you have, with the way physically you deliver your speech. And that's something that I've tried to do here tonight. Not sure if I have any more workshopping to do, because this has been a long old spell on stage. No, end of slideshow, click exit. That's taken me there. I do have time. I'll come and talk to you about Singapore football in just a moment. But as I'm about to wrap things up here, one thing I'd like to do is talk about panels, and I'll do it very quickly. I was going to get some people on stage, but I'll just act it out myself. Panels and moderation should be better, could be better, and will be better if you follow these rules. Always empathize with the audience. Always try and deliver something unique, organic, and only in that moment to the audience. What I mean by that is this. If you are the presenter, how many times have you seen a presenter, put your hands up, ask a question, and then look at the iPad and not listen to the answer? Yeah, I've seen that all the time. I've done it. It's too easily done. You're so wrapped up in what you want to ask that you ask a question, you look down thinking, right, what's the next one? They're talking, it's okay. And you miss a wonderful opportunity. They say something that's like a great big juicy volley waiting for you to smash it. And you ignore it because you're not listening, because you've got your head down worrying about you and about your next question. And the audience sits there going, why did he or she not acknowledge that? Because had you done so, you've now turned this into a you had to be there on the night moment. You've taken that, you've maybe followed up, you've thrown it to the audience, you've built a segue, and that's my next point, segue. Listen to what they say, refer back to what they say in asking your next question. When you do that, and deviate from the script, when you do that again, you've made it come alive. You've made it a special occasion that was only available to the people in here or maybe watching this on screen. The key to any successful panel discussion on TV, in a studio, on a stage, is making sure it's organic and it's in the moment. Now, one other thing, eyeline. I've got 3 people sitting here. I'm here. I've asked a question, and this person is talking to me. Where should those 2 people be looking? Tell me.
The speaker.
At the speaker. Right. We know this. How often does that not happen? Quite often. Eyeline is absolutely everything. I learned this on TV. People go where your eyes go. If you're a TV presenter and you're doing a link on camera, but you're going to throw to a package, move your eyes somewhere. Then the audience knows you're going somewhere. So what I used to do, and this was something I was taught in my first ever TV job by a director, was say, blah, 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 blah. Now we can look back at how that match was won. And I would look down to an imaginary place halfway up a camera. And it just gave a bit of flow. The audience went, oh, we're going somewhere. And then you went somewhere. And then when I asked a question, I made sure I was looking there and they were looking at me. And I always brief my guests, if that person's talking, look at them as if they're saying the best thing that's ever been said. If I'm talking, look at me. Because the minute a set of eyes is wandering around the room, you lot go, what's happening over there? What am I looking at? So anyway, that was what I wanted to say about panels. Always make sure that you bring value to any panel you're on. Make sure as a moderator that you're empathetic and engaged with the audience, and look out for cues from the audience as well. Because in responding to something or someone in the audience, you turn it into a special occasion. Right, I think I'm done for time, Vlad. I think you've got an important AGM to get to. I wish you all the very best with that. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very, very much.
I'm going to try to be a TV presenter.
Come on. Sorry.
started with a provoking question about what is your dream? A man with a story started with become a reporter in newspaper to a glamorous sport elite, and then hit by a question, what do I do? Ladies and gentlemen, let's on the moment to give a big round of applause to the one and only John Dykes. I would like to call our club president to give a token of appreciation to our guest speaker tonight.
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. John, you didn't just deliver a workshop today. You gave us a philosophy that your dream job is not just something you wait for, but something that you build as you go. With purpose, courage, and presence. And here at TMCS, we believe in the same thing when it comes to leadership, communication, and community. And with that, I'd like to make you part of our community by giving you a TMCS United.
Wow. Look at that. Well, thank you very much. You might not be surprised to hear, I've been given quite a few football shirts down the years, but this one really means an awful lot to me because this is part of reinvention. And also, you got my lucky number, 8. So, I grew up in Hong Kong, so number 8 means an awful lot to me. Thank you very much for that. This is wonderful. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. I thought it was just relevant.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
And also we have a book from our mentor, Ernest.
Oh, wow.
He's not here today. He had to travel.
Okay.
But we also wanted to give you.
That's wonderful. Thank you very
You
much.
didn't just speak on the stage. You own the stage. So
Okay.
thank you so much. That was amazing.
Thank you.
Really
Thank you very much.
Let's give a round of applause. And now, everybody, if you could please come up. We're going to take a group photo. And then we're going to take a break and start the AGM. So please come up. We'll do a group photo for everybody.
Up. Before that, could you please scan the QR code for the survey and tell what you love about the workshop?
Yes. Thank you very much.
Come on up, everybody. Come on up.
All right, everybody, let's take a picture together.
Yes, I have.
Let's take a picture.